Hey, crypto family. Hope y'all been doing good today. So, one of the news articles I want to talk about today is one that is by CryptoCoin News, and it says every day Bitcoin doesn't die, it's closer to becoming digital gold. And this comes from an ex JP Morgan executive. So, those who remember, JP Morgan was in the news a lot last year, pretty much because of Jamie Dimon, the CEO. He was claiming Bitcoin was a fraud. That caused a lot of FUD and a lot of other stuff. But this ex JP Morgan executive is actually saying, the longer that Bitcoin lasts, the more likely it is to become that digital gold and that safe haven that people look for as a long-term investment. So it says, quote, despite the rise and fall of various altcoins and fork considerations, time works for Bitcoin, not against it. Every day it doesn't disappear, it gets one step closer to a permanent status of digital gold. And then taking his readers down memory lane on why there is demand for gold and precious metals, he says that the precious metal has always been used as a means of exchange for centuries, as they do not oxidize easily and remain in an uncorrupted form, hence retain their value over time. So pretty much similar to Bitcoin, the longer it's around, the more it appreciates in value, the less supply there is, the more demand there will be, similar to gold and other precious metals. And then he says also that it is common enough for a currency that can be used all over the world, but also not so common that mining can easily disrupt its price. So again, there's both similarities between gold and Bitcoin, and that's why people look at Bitcoin as the digital gold. And then he says, given the historical trading pattern in precious metals, the buy of Bitcoin in 2015 was relatively easy, but now at 2018, including the fork the early prices, it is a more complicated trading dilemma. Bitcoin may or not be in a bubble, but it's important to remember that it did have a major burst in 2014 and even this year. The market has witnessed Bitcoin endure two meaningful corrections. So again, remember that we've had two big corrections. 2014, this year, it's fell over 80% and it's still surviving. So that says something in itself. Not to mention that, a lot more people are invested in Bitcoin than were in 2014. There's a lot more eyes on it. So lastly, it actually talks about Steve Wozniak, who called Bitcoin the only pure digital gold. He says, quote, only Bitcoin is pure digital gold, and I totally buy into that. All the others tend to give up some of the aspects of Bitcoin, for example, being totally decentralized and having no central control. That's the first one they have to give up to try to have a business model. So that's what Bitcoin is able to keep, which has no central control, and it's totally decentralized. So Steve Wozniak, he was the co-founder of Apple, for those who didn't know, and he said he owns one Bitcoin, but it's solely to experiment its use as a payment method, not for him to be an actual investor. But for someone, who co-founded Apple and has a lot of foreshadowing or a lot of, future technology that he's created, it's great to see that, he sees Bitcoin as the only pure digital gold, and that adds to the sentiment of the ex-JP Morgan executive. So just wanted to bring that out for people. I thought it'd be an interesting article there. And then another article I want to talk about is one by Tom Lee. So again, Tom Lee, he works at Fundstrat, and he has been the diehard Bitcoin investor for the past 2 years now. So he's the one, he made the bold prediction that Bitcoin's going to be, at least reach 25,000 by the end of this year. Since then, he's dialed back his investment or his prediction to 15,000. But again, now he doesn't even give a prediction. So it says, the head of research at New York-based Fundstrat Global Advisors recently sat down with Cointelegraph to provide his insights into the recent Bitcoin crash. Although Lee is often lambasted for his overly bullish calls, the Fundstrat representative staved away from issuing price predictions in this interview. And then he says, quote, global markets are down more than 10% between October and November. While crypto actually had a negative correlation in the last 6 weeks, it has flipped to one of the highest levels of correlation to global markets. So I think the macro meltdown has actually finally hit the crypto, which further contributed to essential panic selling. And then he talks about that with Bitcoin and referring to hodlers as well. He said, it seems that right now people need to be patient. And he said, adding that Fundstrat itself advises its clients to have small exposure to crypto, a mere 1% to 2% of their investment portfolio. Now, I don't know if he said for them to invest 1% or 2% beforehand, but now he's saying only invest that much because he realizes the volatility of it, and not everything is guaranteed to go up. So, and then finally, he gives his opinion on which coins have staying power and will retain their value over time. So he mentions Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP, notably because of their resilience in this market, but their use case and how many different applications use them. So you have Bitcoin, the digital gold, you have Ethereum running the smart contracts and the dApps, and then you have XRP, centralized, focus on bankers and financial transactions. So they're different use cases, but they're all very important. Now, personally, I'm not as bullish on Ethereum, but Bitcoin and XRP I am. So again, everyone has their own cryptocurrencies that they like, but that's just my opinion. So he does mention that cryptos have room to grow. And he also mentions that BitMEX is poised to make $1.2 billion in fiscal 2018, which is crazy. And it shows, how many people are actually trading cryptocurrencies, and that's more profit than the Hong Kong exchanges and clearing the NASDAQ, even while Bitcoin is only 10 years old. So he said the proof is in the pudding and crypto isn't going anywhere. And more importantly, there's copious amounts of leg room and big shoes to fill. So he says, there's a lot of investors that will come in eventually. Again, next year we have the backed, exchange adding Bitcoin ETF. When that's going to happen, it's anyone's guess. I mean, they delayed it from November to December. Now I believe it's January. It's still tough to say if they're actually going to release the ETF or if the volatility will slow down that regulation. Now, one last article I want to cover before we go over some Bitcoin analysis is Bitcoin Cash. So this article, Crypto Coin News, it says Bitcoin Cash infrastructure dev says something very wrong with Bitcoin Cash ABC. So again, that big battle between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV between Roger Ver and Craig Wright. That's still, it seems like that's died down, but this dev who's actually worked on Bitcoin Cash says that Bitcoin Cash ABC did a lot of potentially illegal things, and he really doesn't back it anymore and is on the side of Bitcoin SV. And one of the reasons he says that Bitcoin Cash ABC, which is Bitcoin Cash, became centralized regardless of their intentions through the use of checkpoints following the hard fork. Bitcoin Cash ABC rushed a flurry of patches in the wake of the fork and potentially did irreversible harm. He said, quote, I don't want to invest my time and resources working on a platform that can easily undermine my permissionless innovation anytime. For example, if you happen to build anything that competes with Wormhole, expect it to get sidelined in various subtle ways, so subtle that you won't even realize it until it just hits you in the form of an ABC protocol update. So he mentioned that there's a lot of corruption with Roger Ver, the Bitcoin.com website, people working with that, and then also Bitmain that works directly with Bitcoin Cash. So he says they're using their power to kind of overmine anyone working with Bitcoin Cash ABC or anyone who tries to change anything. Basically, they can just override it if they wanted to. So he mentioned that it's a very toxic platform and that he is on the side of Bitcoin SV. Now, me, I'm not really one way or the other, but I will say with this article, if you look over here, we're going to go over some of the coins. If you look at Bitcoin Cash, it's down 0.73%, but then Bitcoin SV is up 6%. So right now, it seems like Bitcoin SV is the hedge for the market, in a bear market. Now, I'm not saying it's going to beat Bitcoin Cash, but I am saying that right now it seems that Bitcoin SV is, a pretty good hedge and maybe something to, put a few $100s in. Of course, not financial advice, just my opinion, but it's going to be interesting to see, in a couple weeks, couple months where these two are. So just wanted to bring that article out. And again, so looking at the market today, you can see Bitcoin's down 1.93% to 41.48, had a little drop from yesterday. XRP is down 1.5% to 36.7 cents. Ethereum's down 2% to $116. Stellar's down 3.6% to 16 cents. And the Bitcoin Cash down 0.73% to $172. Now, I mentioned that Bitcoin needs to hold that $4,100 level in order to retain that bullish momentum. You can see it's fallen below that on this 4-hour chart. Right now, it's $4,064. And this blue line here is the 50-day moving average. I'm hoping we can at least maintain that, potentially bounce off it. This is at the $4,000 level. So if we can't hold 4,000, then that is very bearish to me. And I see us, potentially going down even as low as, 3,500, maybe even retouching lows of around 3,100. So we're going to have to keep in mind, see what happens with that. And then on the RSI again, wanting to hold that 37 level. And that was the level that it could not break whenever it had the huge downturn, but it has maintained that support. So we're going to have to see what happens with that. Now, with that, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, thanks for watching.